چھانے لگے، یہ ہے تیرا میرا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا، 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 یہ کامیابیاں شہرت قدم قدم پہ ملی، یہ کامیابیاں شہرت قدم قدم پہ ملی، نصیب ایسا ملا ماں تیری دعا سے، تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، طواف میں نے کیا تھی صحیح بربادی، طواف میں نے کیا تھی صحیح بربادی، جو میں نے میرا کیا ماں تیری دعا سے، تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر، مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر، میں دشمنوں سے بچا ماں تیری دعا سے، تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، قسم ہے اس میں اجالے کا کچھ جمال نہیں، قسم ہے اس میں اجالے کا کچھ جمال نہیں، عروج اس کو ملا ماں تیری دعا سے، تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، ماں تیری دعا سے، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا، ماں की दुआ जन्नत की हवा की दुआ जन्नत की हवा
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Masberg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus Saccoor, and I'll be in your company for the next 2 hours from 8 to just after 10 p.m. I'll be interviewing our guests shortly. Today, the date is the 15th of October 2025, equivalent to the 23rd of Rabiul Akhir 1447 AH. I'm quite pleased to be back live on News in Focus. I have been away for a few weeks due to various other programs that took place. But alhamdulillah, on tonight's show, we have a very exciting lineup. We're going to talk about the Gaza Peace plan that was recently announced by the President of USA together with various other nations that were involved in this peace plan. We will also be chatting briefly on the global Sumud Flotilla. We know various ships and boats were recently sailing into Gaza, and we know prior to that there were other flotillas that floated towards Gaza, and exactly what happened. We'll get an update from one of the activists that was in one of the flotillas. We're also going to chat about the global tensions, the financial implications thereof. Is there an economic emergency later on in the program? With me, I have some very prominent guests that are live in the studio with me. I'd like to welcome Dr. Fatima Hendricks. She's an associate professor of, she used to be at Chicago University. She worked in various countries abroad. She has a doctorate in occupational therapy. She's an author. She's also been a civic activist for many decades. She's got a lot of passion for what's happening to our Palestinian brothers and sisters and people in Gaza and in and around Palestine. She was one of the occupants of one of the global Sumud flotillas that floated towards Gaza recently, and alhamdulillah, she's back in South Africa. She flown in from Cape Town this afternoon, and this evening is her first program in KwaZulu-Natal, generally to talk about the situation in Palestine, the kind of atrocities that are taking place with our people in Palestine, the gender abuse that's taking place in Palestine, and to create an awareness amongst us that we cannot take these things for granted, what the apartheid Israel is doing to our people in Palestine. But indeed, there are also gender abuses in other parts of the world, and she wants to conscientize our people about those issues. I also have with me Nazir Paulsen. Nazir was previously in my show. He's a member of the EFF Central Command Team, and he's a member of Parliament. He's quite verbose on the Palestinian issue. We see him in various video clips in and around the country and in the Western Cape, where he's involved in protest marches, not only on the political front, but very strongly against the atrocities that are taking place in Palestine, against the Zionist people throughout the country, exactly indeed those that are in South Africa that are supporting the genocide. So we have both those guests live in the studio. Other guests will be joining us shortly. But before I play a clip from one of the orators on what is the current situation in Palestine and why our Arab countries are complicit, thereafter I'll follow it with a very emotional nasheed requested by our guest, Dr. Fatima Hendricks. And it's an Urdu nasheed that actually personifies the difficulties our brothers and sisters are facing in Palestine. But before I play that clip and the short nasheed, I'd like to welcome live in the studio Dr. Fatima Hendricks. Fatima, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Well, Bismillah wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Yunus, and all the wonderful people of KZN. It's really such an honor to be with you and to share this space with Brother Nazir. Thank you so much for the invitation.
And I know you're having many programs in KZN, and this is your first one, and we're delighted to have you live in the studio with us this evening to share some of your experiences worldwide and indeed what the situation was in the flotilla and the kind of awareness you want to create about the situation in Gaza. I'd like to also welcome Nazir Paulsen. Nazir happened to be coming into Durban from Cape Town yesterday, and he met with one of our colleagues, and I said, it'll be a pleasure having you live in the studio. Nazir is an all-rounder. He can chat. He can talk about ratepayers. He can talk about politics. He can talk about service delivery. He can talk about the different political parties, including the EFF. Nazir, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran, Brother Yunus, for having us and having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to be in the studio with a revolutionary, someone that has gone and confronted the Zionists face to face. You know, most of us attack them via social media, attack them via marches, but someone went there. Dr. Fatima went there, confronted them face to face, risked everything, and to me that is nothing short of revolutionary.
Oh, definitely. And we're delighted to have it to give us a first-hand report on what's happening, and I'm sure others will follow. But before we chat with Fatima and yourself, Nazir, I thought let's just play this one short clip where the brother talks about the situation in Palestine and why our Arab nations so complicit and quiet about it. And we'll then follow it with a beautiful nasheed, and inshallah we'll discuss after that.
The betrayal of Palestine, Arab complicity in genocide. Brothers and sisters, and to the rulers who hear these words, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, and the rest who hide behind silence, I speak to you directly. You call yourselves guardians of Islam, protectors of Arab dignity, custodians of the holy sites, leaders of the Muslim world. But what have you done while Gaza burns? What have you done while Palestine bleeds? While children dig through rubble with their bare hands, you have turned your backs. You have extended your hands not to your brothers in Palestine, but to those who murder them. Saudi Arabia, you move step by step toward normalization with Israel, opening your skies to their planes, whispering in Washington's ear that you are ready to make peace while your brothers and sisters lie in mass graves. You hold the keys to the holiest places in Islam, yet your silence on Palestine is louder than any sermon. You buy weapons from America by the billions arms that strengthen the same empire that fuels Israel's bombs. What is your excuse? That your throne depends on their approval? That you fear Washington more than you fear God? Your silence has become your shame, your betrayal, a stain that will never be washed from your legacy.
फलस्तीनियों ने क़यामत में आका को दुखड़ा सुनाया तो फिर क्या करोगे फलस्तीनियों ने क़यामत में आका को दुखड़ा सुनाया तो फिर क्या करोगे अगर मुस्तफा ने भी नाराज होकर तो खपना फिराया तो फिर क्या करोगे फलस्तीनियों ने क़यामत में आका को दुखड़ा सुनाया तो फिर क्या करोगे फलस्तीनियों ने क़यामत में आका को दुखड़ा सुनाया तो फिर क्या करोगे उड़ी जा रही की लाशें फुगा बन के से इलाही की जानिब उड़ी जा रही है शहीदों की लाशें फुगा बन के इलाही की जानिब अगर ये मनाज़िल तुम्हारे घरों में खुदा ने दिखाया तो फिर क्या करोगे फलस्तीनियों ने कयामत में आकर को दुखड़ा सुनाया तो फिर क्या करोगे फलस्तीनियों ने कयामत में आकर को दुखड़ा सुनाया तो फिर क्या करोगे जो तुम खा रहे से है उनकी जो तुम पी रहे हो ये सब खो है तुम खा रहे हो ये नशे है उनकी जो तुम पी रहे हो ये सब खो है उनका खुदा
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus. I'd like to, first of all, have a brief chat to Dr. Fatima Hendricks. Fatima, obviously you've been in civic activism, you've been around the world, and finally you decided that there's now a need for a reaction to the humanitarian crisis that's taking place in Gaza, particularly the fact that humanitarian aid is being prohibited or was being prohibited by the Zionist Israelis, and the people are dying of starvation, and the kind of genocide that was taking place. The reaction worldwide from the people is that something needs to be done, because a lot of the governments were really inactive in dealing with the issue. So some flotillas with various communities in these flotillas flowed or went towards Gaza, but did not succeed. But the Sumud flotilla that had approximately 50 boats or ships that recently floated towards Gaza, they went in a united fashion towards Gaza. Now, what I'd like you to explain to our listeners, to get straight into the subject, is that there was something that motivated you to join this flotilla. Perhaps that conscious in you about the situation in Palestine has been there for many years. And we were discussing before we came on air about the kind of reaction from an Islamic perspective that we Muslims have to take, because 99% of the people that are being persecuted in Palestine are Muslims, and a small percentage are other communities. So from an Islamic perspective, there's one of three reactions we can take. Either we go in and physically become part of the battle, but that's not possible because there's a limited access to the place. And then the second form is to talk about it, to go there and do some physical action to respond to the atrocities. That's the second form of one's level of Iman. And the third one is to make du'as. This is the sunnah or the explanation that the Prophet ﷺ gave to us in the time of oppression. So from your perspective, Fatima, I know you've been around throughout the world, you'll work throughout the world. What motivated you to take this bold step to join that flotilla and go towards Gaza to make a difference in people's lives?
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh again. There are two perspectives that I approach this question. The one is situated in my South Africanness and growing up during apartheid and experiencing apartheid and living through experiences of having people disappeared, having activists taken in the middle of the night and detained as hostages in prison, living a life of segregation, living a life of witnessing the Bantustans, the forced displacement of people, and living that experience. And the second that really has fueled my activism. And the second part, which is the primary part, is my belief in justice, in responding to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran to stand up firmly for justice. And these principles, this principle of justice is framed on a foundation for me of Maqasid al-Sharia, which really talks to the preservation of life, the preservation of lineage, the preservation of faith, the preservation of family, of wealth. And these are principles that underpin my understanding of Islam, that shape my worldview. And this worldview has motivated me throughout my life to grow up in a space of being within the Islamic movement, from the Muslim Youth Movement to the Muslim Students Association to the Islamic Society, at campuses, to other formations, both locally and internationally. And I think this is really an important lens from which for me to approach this, because it is part, my participation in the Fotilla has been a response to a communal obligation, a fard kifaya, to respond as a community. And I feel to have had this amana upon me to act in this capacity on behalf of being part of the South African delegation, on behalf of South Africans, not just South African Muslims, but the South Africans at large. And in that way, I was one of the 6 that eventually got onto the boats.
Now, having got into the boats, it was a long journey.
Yes.
Perhaps you can explain us, sort of on what basis you always selected to join the flotilla, because I know there were many people that were keen, but obviously there were certain requirements. And obviously from a psychological and mental point of view, knowing very well the risks associated with this particular trip, from a psychological perspective, how did those that invited you all measure that you will be able to sort of cope with the challenges that one is perceived to face? I.e. being in a small boat, the risk of the problems associated with sea travel. But when you get closer to Gaza, the kind of reactions, the possible abduction, if we call it, and being imprisoned. So are you psychologically ready for all that? And you know very well from an Islamic perspective, as you've indicated to us, why you were keen to undertake. Perhaps you just want to explain to our listeners exactly that aspect.
Shukran so much. That's a really good question, because given that there were 30,000 applications from around the world, how was this selection made? So in my experience, I've worked on the Turkey-Syria border with women and with people that have experienced conflict, patients that used to come across the border when I lived in Turkey for over a year, used to come from Aleppo into Turkey for treatment, for cancer treatment. And as a cancer survivor and an occupational therapist, I helped with mental health and well-being. So I've worked in psychiatry and in mental health and well-being for several years. In my experience, I graduated as an occupational therapist back in 1997. That was an important factor. The second part of the experience that they were looking for, apart from professional qualifications and experience in conflict situations, is also my experience in non-violence training. And so I cut my teeth in the early days at Medina Institute Center for Nonviolence and Peace Studies. And because this was a direct nonviolent action, it was very important that people were grounded in the principles of nonviolence. And nonviolence as a strategy is really important on this mission, because we're up against a brutal Zionist regime that is armed to the teeth. And we saw what happened in 2010 with the Mavi Marmara, where 9 activists were killed in trying to defend themselves as the Israeli army descended upon them. And so the last thing we want is to repeat those kind of deaths and to repeat those kind of risks. And therefore the strategy for this global Sumud flotilla was intentionally by design, direct nonviolent action, to reach the shores of Gaza through opening up a humanitarian sea corridor of aid and to deliver aid to the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Now, the experience in the flotilla, there were, if I recall, approximately 50. I think the boats met in different towns or ports, some in Tunis, some in Barcelona, and we're quite proud that the Spanish people responded together with other countries. Now, the boat that you joined, and you were one of 6, and obviously you indicated that the criteria used was very stringent by the organizers because they knew it's going to be a challenging task. And I did interview several activists while the boats were floating towards Gaza, and I asked some probing questions whether there is belief that they will get to the shores of Gaza, and the response was that if Allah wills, that will happen, but those that are going can expect the worst as well, because others face that, and obviously the kind of abduction or persecution and the abuse that's going to take place. So your particular boat, I know that when Mrs. Sumar, Dr. Sumar spoke, she mentioned she was one female in the boat that she traveled in. I'm not sure whether you were in the same boat or you were in another boat with others. How was the selection criteria of who gets into which boat, and from which port did you all sail, and how long you all were in sea?
Okay. So actually, Zahira and myself were on the same boat initially on Amsterdam, and then she was redeployed to Fair Lady. I was very blessed, and I made the Hajjud Salah repeatedly as I was trying to purify my niyyah before getting on this boat, and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to please put me with good people on the boat. And subhanAllah, they put me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated that I was on a Maghrib boat. And that meant that I was in a boat with Algerians, with Tunisians, and a sister from Ireland. And being in this, on this flotilla, on this particular boat, the Amsterdam, I had Dr. Makri, who was on the Mavi Marmara. I had the honor of being with an MP, Sayeda Zubayda, who was a 71-year-old female, who was previously a member of parliament in the Algerian government. I had the privilege of being with 2 journalists, one brother with cerebral palsy and a heart condition, and some other comrades. So the kind of diversity on each boat was unique. And the boat that we had was captained by 2 Tunisians. And we also had an imam on board, Imam Ammar, and that really was very powerful. Because we did all of our salah in Jama'ah, most of them. We recited Quran daily. We had Quran recitation for Surah Kahf together on a Friday. And the atmosphere was one of mutual love and respect and working together in a servitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recognizing that our mission was purely for His sake, and reminding each other in our interactions, in our behaviors, being very intentional of reminding each other of the prophetic sunnah and our manners of interaction. And that was extended through the chores on the boat, how we kept our boat clean, how we helped each other with cooking, cleaning, and all the remainder of the chores, and managing the boat so that it would be healthy and a good place to be for all of us.
Now, for the benefit of our listeners, how many boats were sailing close to each other in the journey towards Gaza? I know there were 50 in total, but many of them were different distances away, and some left a little bit later, etc. I'm really pleased, and our listeners are pleased to note and to listen that at least, these sort of requirements from a Dini perspective were fulfilled, notwithstanding that sometime in the dark of the night in the middle of the sea, there's time to make tahajjud and zikr and du'as and turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the changes And the kind of sacrifices that you all finally made is reflective of some kind of changes that are taking place. We firmly believe that when mankind reacts, then Allah's help comes, particularly those that are becoming helpless in Gaza. So the effort you made, you may not have reached Gaza, you came close, but that sacrifice shows and not only Muslims, non-Muslims were also there. So if you can just explain how many boats were together, and I know, you had to manage your time. It's been 24 hours. Some of you are going to sleep, some going to stay awake, some going to make sure you all had experienced captains in the boats, etc. Perhaps you just want to explain that part, because finally I want to cut a long story short and come to the crux of the discussion is when you were close to Gaza, when did the interception take place, etc. We'll cover that shortly.
Inshallah. So the boats had sailed from Spain, from Italy, from Greece, from Turkey, from Libya, and from Tunisia, and we joined from Tunisia.
Now, those ports welcomed you all when you were there.
Yeah, well, we did not have EU visas, so they had sailed and joined the flotilla.
Okay.
So all the boats had a meeting point. We had coordinates like waypoint 1, waypoint 2, whatever, whichever the coordinates were, and we would track each other. The boats sailed at different speeds because we had some that were sailboats and some were motorboats. I was on a motorboat, and we had to slow down so that the sailboats could keep together. We lost a lot of boats. We lost boats along the way because engines would burn out. Some boats sank. Some boats were sabotaged. In Tunis,
now, those boats that sank, you'll be able to transfer the occupants to another boat.
Some were redeployed onto other boats and some not. Some had to be returned to land. Some boat
You'll
crew
manage
members
to survive or save them from any kind of drowning of sorts.
Yes, they were taken to the emergency boat, which is a large boat that was also available by the Red Crescent, and some boats two boats were attacked. Everybody knows in Tunisia. And we had like 14 attacks in Greece waters and the surrounds. And then, so we did lose some boats along the way due to mechanical failures and other situations like that. It was a challenge keeping all of the boats together. But when we were close to interception, they had the night before all of us were intercepted. Well, the first set were intercepted. The Israeli army came out and started jamming the signals of the two main lead boats. And at that point, we thought that it would be the night of interception, but it was actually a rehearsal for what would follow the next evening.
And where did that take place?
That happened, we were still far from Gaza. We were around the orange line, which is about 150, I want to say approximately between 100 and 150 nautical miles of the coast.
And these warships came, or what kind of ships from Israel?
They came with naval ships, yes, naval ships around those boats, and we were still further back at that point. And then the next night they came full force with many naval ships, a large naval ship that just had lights shining on the ocean, other ships with equipped with a full military equipment, the many soldiers on board, heavily armed, and with boats that had water cannons that they used to spray, and some boats were under attack for 1.5 hours full with water cannons. We were under attack for 10 hours on the water and 4 separate attacks of water cannons.
What kind of attacks they were? Were they announcing to you all to turn back or to?
They encircled us. So they used to go around us in circles.
Yes.
And, in a menacing way, and then spray water and go off again and then come back and jam our signals and have drones fly above us. So
how many boats were there when they started this encircling?
Look, the entire flotilla was intact at that point, and they started to break up the flotilla.
How many were there? About 20 or 30 or 40?
Look, I mean, we're on the ocean, and you're only worried about your boat and the boats that are around you. So you're seeing, for me, I would have said 6-7 boats in my vicinity, immediate eyesight, but we were concentrating on our boat and trying to follow the protocols of being aware of the attacks, watching for drones, waiting for interception interception, making sure our life jackets were on, and everybody being prepped, and getting comms out to the other boats to let them know that our interception was pending.
Now, from a psychological perspective, knowing very well that you were reciting Quran, reading your Salah, mentally prepared for this type of situation, from a psychological perspective, how did you all handle the situation? Were all the members in the boat calm? You were supporting each other, and you were prepared for the worst?
Absolutely. So I remember personally excusing myself while the attack was on. I went to make wudu again. I made sure that everybody was had wudu, reminded everybody went, and we were all making wudu, and making sure that we had all recited our shahada. And I made 2 rakas of salah just before they boarded. And when we were intercepted, myself and another doctor, while we were on the hull of the ship, we were sitting upright and we had our hands on the edge of the boat, and we could see that the sun was rising and the military was above. I mean, we were on the boat already kidnapped, and we sat in that position and we made our Fajr Salah. So there was a great awareness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was watching. He was aware, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was with us. And that resistance continued. People were making adhkar, reciting, in their minds. You could see, and also the lips moving, but we couldn't really speak because we're not allowed to do so. So we had been prepared, and we were prepared for any eventuality, recognizing that previous people on the flotilla had been killed.
Now, when they intercepted, did they get into your boats?
Yes.
And when they got into your boats,
Mm-hmm.
they obviously asked you all to to retrieve or to concede that you all are now being abducted, or what was the procedure in terms of the manner in which these people from the military ships, they got into the boats?
Right.
How did they get in? They just jumped into the boats, or they?
Okay. So they pulled alongside the boat. They told us that we are in illegal waters, which is not true. We were in international waters, that we were breaching Israeli law, and that we would be intercepted. In response, we told them that they need to back down, that we are a humanitarian effort in international waters.
Who was the spokesperson on your side?
The spokesperson was a colleague of mine and myself. I put the brothers were behind me, and I stood with the doctor beside me, and I put my hands out in front of me, and we were prepared at that point to show them that we did not have arms in our hands. We refused to surrender in putting our hands above our heads, because we don't surrender to the Zionist regime. And they pulled right up against the boat and said, "You are being taken by the IDF, that we were in breach of their laws, and that they were going to be boarding the boat." They were all heavily armed, and we had heavy armory facing us at the time. They jumped onto the boat. We stood there. They marched us to the front, the hull of the boat, and then from there took us one by one for searching.
I just want to go back a little bit. When they got into the boat, did they sort of pilot the boat to the nearest port?
The boat was stationary. The boat was stationary while they got everybody to the front, and then did the search, trashed the boat, make sure they wanted to check that there weren't any arms or anything that we were carrying, before they then took the boat, kidnapped stole the boat.
They towed the boat, or they took over the?
They took over the boat, and they had trouble. Funny story, they had trouble moving our boat. And so they asked the captain to identify himself, because they didn't know how to use the gears on the boat.
So they
asked the captain to actually help
drive
them
the boat
to show them how to drive the boat
to the nearest port,
to the Ashdod, which is where we were held.
How far was it from where you were held?
Several hours, 5-6 hours. It was several hours.
So they followed you all with the military, or the military was circulating?
They were on the boat with us. The soldiers were on the boat.
And then the others went for the other boats?
Yes.
So this was the methodology they used. And how many soldiers were in the boat with you all?
2, 4, 6, 7. 7 soldiers, maybe.
So it took them
7, 8.
several hours with the pilot piloting the boat to the nearest port.
Yes, to the.
And then the others followed, all the other boats.
So we were the first of 3 boats in the port. There was nobody else there. We got to Ashdod and it was heavy military. It was all the press. It was the ministers when we had gotten there. And the first boat, Captain Yunus, had arrived with Rima Hassan. We were the second boat in Amsterdam, and the third boat behind us was Mali. And when I got off, they basically held me, 2 soldiers, took me in for processing, forced my hijab off. We had strip searches done, cut my shoes, accused me of being a terrorist, all these things that happened. And this is where we begin to see the brutality of the Israeli regime manifest itself. I mean, in its psychotic nature, where they're able to take a cancer survivor like myself and mock a cancer survivor for her body form, which is not any different from what they've done, these soldiers, with women's underwear. Right? Do you remember those scenes of women's underwear, of having and wearing women's underwear during a genocide of dead women and women whose homes they've gone and taken over, demolished? I mean, and it's this kind of sick twistedness that you see manifested.
Those
in
were
this
the caliber of soldiers that were on
soldiers.
board.
Those are the barbaric. And can you imagine if we had, these so-called like Hamas soldiers or whatever behaving in exactly the same way? They would have had a field day about like barbaric Islam, the Arab, how perverse Arab people are, how sexually repressed, Muslim men are, or whatever it might be. But this is the level of depravity that they have. And then on the other side of this conversation, you see that the sexualization of Israeli soldiers, the women soldiers, every woman soldier looked like she was, like all dolled up and, very. It's amazing to see this kind of, sexualization and claiming that Israel claimed that they had the world's sexiest soldiers. So this is this like pot of real sickness.
So were the female soldiers apprehending you all, or
yes, male and female,
and both were the same,
both
abusive?
Well, women were much worse than the men. For me personally.
Now, from a psychological perspective, how do you read into the situation? Are they sort of, do have a mental problem, or are they deliberately humiliating people, or, from a mental angle or from a psychiatric or psychological angle, how would you describe these soldiers?
Well, there's something really sick about it because, I mean, I remember, look, I shared a cell with Greta Thunberg, with Marie Frey, she's an MP. We were in Block 5, Cell 1. And I remember us being attacked in the cell where we were trying to get mattresses, and 2 comrades went out to get mattresses, brought it back, and then again they were apprehended and a tussle ensued. And one of the comrades was pushed to the ground. Another comrade wrapped herself around this other sister of ours and was attacked, pulled by her hair along the ground. And this was the same Reyes. She was the same sister that was picked on in our cell, called an animal. I mean, male soldiers would barge into our cells, and it was in the evening, and we were just, trying, it was very hot, and barge into the cell and then called us animals for looking the way that we did. So this Reyes, she actually was just released 2 or 3 days ago. She actually acted in self-defense and protected herself by grabbing onto one of the soldiers, and they actually then came in with riot gear into our cell, had us kneel on the floor, and had rifles, guns put to our heads with like laser and everything as they took 2 of our comrades to solitary confinement. I mean, it's the unarmed women, unprovoked, on mattresses, and then having kept Reyes in detention, in solitary confinement for another, 8-9 days after we were released, and then on top of that, making her take a plea bargain of $3,000 that she had to then pay in fines for her self-defense. I mean, this is the depravity of the Zionist regime.
Now, the quick process of, the period you'll spend in detention and the basis in which you were released. Perhaps you just want to cover that briefly, Fatima.
Right. So throughout, I refused to sign any forms. On arrival, I did not lift a single pen. I did not sign a single form, engage with any of the Zionist entities' mechanics in their processing. I kept on asking for legal services and consular services and legal representation, and kept saying that I'm a humanitarian worker. My destination was Gaza. It was not to be in Israel. And then through this process, the first time I actually saw my lawyer, which was the Adala lawyer, was in my court hearing. And that is the very first time that I saw my lawyer, and she was literally defending me in real time. When we were in...
how were these lawyers appointed?
Well, they are Adala lawyers. They are part of the human rights engine of defending Palestinian prisoners. And so they're very experienced, and they've pretty much seen it all. And at that point, I had
Were
said...
they not harassed by these Israeli soldiers?
Look, we were not given access to the lawyers. We were not given access to consular services. South Africa had 5 minutes. There were 6 of us. We had 5 minutes with our consular services, whereas every other consulate was able to see their people for hours and repeatedly. We were denied access to consular services.
Is that because of South Africa taking Israel to ICJ?
Absolutely.
So that was being violated, your legal rights?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So now... how many days you all spent in prison?
Some of the others spent 5 days, but because I had arrived a day earlier with being the first ones there, 6 days for us.
And how many of you all were in one cell?
We were around 14 at times, between 14 and 16, sometimes down. They kept on moving us around. At one point, we were actually 47 women in one cell. All
from the flotilla?
All from the flotillas, all from the different flotillas.
And the sort of facilities in the cell?
Oh, terrible, disgusting.
It's the first time you'll experience something like this.
Look, some of us had been in prison
Previously,
before,
yes.
but in the Israeli prison, it's like Guantanamo Bay. So we witnesses. I led together with a Tunisian sister and an Omani sister a holding of space session where we actually read the writing of the Palestinian prisoners from the walls in their own handwriting, their narratives of how long they'd been there, where they were moved from, their stories of their families, etc. We saw the drawings. I was so grateful to the person that pointed out the Palestinian prisoner that had previously been there. It was a male prison before we got there, that put the direction of the Qibla. So we were able to pray because it was written on the wall. So there were these acts of defiance and testimony that was living in each of the cells that we went to. In the courtyard, I pointed out to the sisters, and I said to them, "Hey, comrades, look at this blood-spattered wall." You had to look pretty carefully to see it, but there was a blood-spattered wall in the corridor, in the courtyard, and I put my hand on the blood fingerprints of the martyr, which I believe is a martyr, on there, and recited the quls and recited Surah Fatiha, and also made 2 rakas for the martyrs in facing the solitary confinement. Above the barbed wire in solitary confinement, I could see like the tasbih, like the bead, the subha, thrown onto the barbed wire as if to send to somebody, but it got caught and entangled. So there were all these powerful images. And another question that I had was, why are the floors brand new in this prison? They were new epoxy-coated gray floors in this prison, which was really out of sync with what was the rest of the prison looked like, with these rusty doors and old toilets and really gross looking facilities. And so my question to other comrades was, what are they hiding? What are they hiding with these epoxy-coated floors? Around us in the ceilings, there were bullet holes. On the walls, there were bullet holes. And these are testimonies to what the Palestinians have been going through. We only saw glimpses. And we know, for example, currently, Marwan Barghouti, he has been assaulted by 8 members of the Israeli unit in prison, and he lost consciousness and he has 4 ribs broken. As a member of Healthcare Workers for Palestine, South Africa, we know about over 1,500 healthcare workers killed, and about Dr. Bursch, the orthopedic surgeon that was sexually assaulted and killed in detention. And we know about the many of the bodies of the Palestinian hostages that are coming back and being released right now. And we know the state of these bodies that are witnesses to brutality. Their bodies will speak to the brutality of what the Israeli regime has done in war crimes.
Fatima, we'll take a short break to get you to regain some of your breath, and we'll conclude the discussion on the stay you all had in the prison and the release thereafter.
Shukran so much. Alhamdulillah.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Making news data, the 15th of October. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM. 2 airplanes are missing in KwaZulu-Natal Midlands after Mayday call. America Molina. Authorities say there is a search for 2 aircraft that have gone missing. The Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center says one of the airplanes sent out a Mayday call to the air traffic control earlier today. They say the 2 aircraft failed to arrive at their destinations. Emergency services initially received a report saying an airplane had crashed. KwaZulu-Natal Transport spokesperson Dabezinhle Lesbia is wading in.
That we are currently liaising with the Aeronautical Search and Rescue Coordination Center. They have indicated to us that there is a plane missing in the KZN Midlands. They've requested that we assist in terms of the management of the traffic in the area, because there are motorists and the onlookers that are causing distraction. We do not want to see this important operation being disrupted. So that is why our highly efficient and dedicated team from Road Traffic Inspectorate is currently managing the traffic flow, and we are pleading to the motorists and all other individuals that are not responsible for the search and rescue operation to please allow the team to do their work.
More news. The ANC's Provincial Task Team convener, Michael Mabiakulu, says the party has no position on a proposed motion of no confidence against KwaZulu-Natal Premier Tammy Ntuli. Mabiakulu had been responding to calls from the MK party following a letter circulating online calling for the motion of no confidence against Premier Tammy Ntuli. The correspondence addressed to the KZN or KwaZulu-Natal legislature claims the Premier's office is in disarray. Ntuli has dismissed the calls, saying the provincial government remains stable. Mabiakulu says that the ANC remains committed to the government of national unity. Local media says the DA in KwaZulu-Natal is yet to comment on the matter. More news. Police Minister Hassan is next in the hot seat before the police's the committee in Parliament investigating alleged corruption and political interference in the criminal justice system, and is expected to give his testimony tomorrow when proceedings resume. The committee's chairperson, Soviet Lekanyane, confirmed the schedule.
Minister Mutunu is coming tomorrow. We will be with him tomorrow, the 16th of October, and he will conclude his evidence on Friday, the 17th, and he will come back next week, Tuesday, for questions by members. And then General Begikele will then complete the week. So next week, the 2 witnesses will be Minister Mkunu and General Begikele.
Exam quality assurer Malusi has given the education system the green light to administer the 2025 end-of-year national examinations. Mary Antoinette Delwile, the manager for the quality assurance of assessment for post-school qualification, says over 1 million candidates have registered to write the final matric exams, which kicks off next Tuesday. Delwile says that they have received final registration data from all 4 assessment bodies. And finally, international story, a senior Hamas official says Israel is obstructing efforts to locate and return captives' bodies in Gaza, blaming its widespread destruction of the territory and recent decisions to close the Rafah crossing and reduce humanitarian aid deliveries. The official said many captives and their Palestinian guards were killed during Israel's military strikes, causing loss of communication with units responsible for the bodies. The official placed responsibility for the deaths and missing bodies believed to be buried under rubble, along with thousands of civilians, on Benjamin Netanyahu, his cabinet, and the military. The official made the remarks in an interview earlier yesterday following Israel's decision to close the Rafah crossing and reduce humanitarian aid deliveries. Moves Hamas have stated violates the terms of the recent ceasefire agreement. Your weather, 21 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. Local media says authorities are saying that there's a search for 2 aircraft that are missing. The Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center says that one of the airplanes sent out Mayday call to the air traffic earlier today. That's the news.
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
Craving for an easy, spicy and delicious meal made in minutes? Introducing Easy Mee Goreng, Korean-style instant noodles from Noodle King. This delicious, flavorful noodles is ready in minutes with a kick in every bite. Get your pack of Easy Mee Goreng at a retail store near you. Noodle King also boasts a whole variety of other delicious pantry must-haves. Look out for our brands at your favorite retail stores.
Ladies, are you concerned about your health and well-being? Then the Al-Ansar Cancer Support Group's annual Cancer Awareness and Chai Day is for you. Dynamic speakers, an awesome tea garden, lucky draws, free blood pressure and sugar checks, free entry. Join us on Saturday the 25th of October at the Al-Ansar Hall, 189 West Road, Overport, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Let's unite to fight cancer's might.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Kenfield Auto.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا وسعت كل شيء رحمة وعلما فاغفر للذين تابوا واتبعوا سبيلك وقهم عذاب الجحيم.
I won't start.
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes.
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service.
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
Get ready to elevate your fitness game at First Fitness in Durban's Berea. With a spacious free weight area, award-winning equipment, and exclusive ladies-only parking and training level, we've got everything you need to crush your goals. Hit the ground running on our outdoor track or unleash your inner warrior in our MMA and boxing dungeon. Plus, enjoy high security and ample parking. And don't forget to refuel at our halal coffee and health restaurant for the best in coffees, smoothies, and healthy eats. Join us today and redefine your fitness journey. First Fitness, dare to be extraordinary.
Verily, every soul shall taste death. A gentle reminder for all of us. The Al-Ansar Outreach warmly invites you, dear sisters, to our annual Ghusl classes, a sacred journey guided by respected mu'allimat. Ladies only, Saturday, 25th October, 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Seats are limited, so don't delay. Register now, 031-208-1601.
Radio Al-Ansar, Durban, 90.4 FM. Peter Maritzburg, 105.6 FM.
Ya Rasool Allah,
یا حبیب اللہ آقا 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 پھر کے گلی گلی تباہ ہو گئے صبر کی کھائے کیوں دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں رخصت قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں رخصت قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں کوئی ہمیں جگائے کیوں پھر کے دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں یاد حضور کی قسم غفلت عیش ہے ستم یاد حضور کی قسم غفلت عیش ہے ستم خوب ہے قید غم میں ہم خوب ہے قید غم میں ہم کوئی ہمیں چھڑائے کیوں گلی وہ جو نہ تھے تو کچھ نہ تھا وہ جو نہ ہو تو کچھ نہ ہو وہ جو نہ تھے تو کچھ نہ تھا وہ جو نہ ہو تو کچھ نہ ہو جان ہے وہ جہان کی جان ہے وہ جہان کی جان.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, Dr. Fatima Hendricks, she's basically an associate professor. She was an associate professor at Chicago State University, also worked in several countries abroad. A doctorate in occupational therapy, gave us a very comprehensive account of the global Sumud Fotilla trip to Gaza, the kind of challenges they faced, the abduction of the boat, the life in imprisonment, and compared it to what our Palestinian brothers and sisters are going through. Thousands of them are in a prison, how they're being abused, the inhumanity that's taking place, the genocide that's taking place. This is basically the tragic circumstances that take place to our Muslim brothers and sisters in Palestine, and a lot of our Muslim countries are complicit, and they've done nothing about it. And the word that's going around, they stand before the world as if they are peacemakers, where Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, Why to announce the end of the war in Gaza some 2 years later when tens of thousands of people have died? Don't be fooled by flattering speeches and photo shoots. Beneath the icing of the cake, there is hypocrisy, lies, and deception. So we'll unpack that later on in the show. But I want to get back to Fatima just to wrap up. Fatima, the process relating to your deportation or release from the prison, you mentioned that the South African legal guys were there, but there was pressure from the other countries to have their sort of comrades released. So that process took a few days, up to about 5 or 6 days that you were there. Eventually, your release and deportation back to South Africa. Briefly you can wrap up that process, so it kind of gives us a sort of a report back on the mental impact that had on those that were deported. Was it an expectation, etc.? So perhaps if you can just wrap up the discussion around those issues, Fatima.
So, Bismillah. One of the things that was very stark was the difference between how Global North and Global South people were being treated. Generally, Global South boat crew members were released before us. They were on planes that were specifically chartered for them. Like some of the countries had planes that were chartered for the members of the citizens of that particular country, and they had additional seats, and some of the boat crew members joined those, the consulates made arrangements for those boat crew members to join those chartered flights. We were the last set out. There were only 6 people left after we had left, so we were the last that went. We did not fly out of Ben Gurion Airport. We were woken early in the morning without any information that we were going to be released that day, went for medical checkups, put onto these prison trucks that we were on when we arrived, and we were driven to the Jordanian border. At that point, we were handed over from the Israelis to the Jordanian ambassador. We were put on buses to get into Jordan, very close to the Jordanian-Israeli border. We went into a hall, and that is where the ambassadors of the different countries were waiting for us. And at each time, we were handed off from one ambassador to another. So, for example, the ambassador of Jordan was waiting for a South African ambassador to Jordan was waiting for us there. When we flew to Qatar in the middle of the night, the South African ambassador to Qatar was waiting for us at the airport at the gate of the flight. When we departed Qatar, when we got to South Africa, Interpol was waiting for us at the door to verify that we had landed in South Africa, and to let the Israelis know that the detainees, their hostages, had made their way home.
Now, from a psychological point of view, was this kind of treatment expected for you to handle this whole thing mentally?
Look, some people have not been in situations like this before, and they have taken it very hard. There are triggers that in the environment that set people off in different ways mentally. I do need to note that there were people who were on antidepressants, there were people on anxiety medication, there were people on ADHD medication and different types of meds in our cells that were not receiving medical care. And therefore, they were already feeling and looking unstable because of the lack of medical care. And when we add the kind of stresses that people have experienced, people have experienced great mental harm. And so there are the boat crew members that are undergoing treatment at the moment so that it doesn't develop into PTSD, as well as getting their themselves medically stabilized. Some people have injuries, physical injuries to their bodies. For me, I was denied medical treatment until my lawyer wrote a letter demanding medical care. As you know, you might know I was paralyzed before. I was on life support for 30 days. I was in ICU ICU for 40 days, hospital 4 months, and rehab for 18. I had to learn to walk again, talk again, and the only movement I had was my eyes, basically. And that's the way I used to communicate, and I lived on a feeding tube.
That was how long ago,
That
Fatima?
was in 2010 to 2011. And subsequently, I got breast cancer. I had a bilateral mastectomy and a year of chemotherapy. So I also have some other medical conditions. So I needed to get medical care. And it was only through the consistent demands from the prisoners, from the hostages, from my fellow hostages, and also from the people that were on hunger strike that were demanding that we would get medical care.
Now, finally, Fatima, I've got Faisal, Dr. Faisal Suliman in the line. He's also a Palestinian activist and really involved in all issues. I'm going to chat with him briefly, but from your point, just to conclude, and we will chat on the way forward. Generally, when you embark on this trip, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the vision that I want to make a difference in the lives of our people that are going through a genocide in Palestine, and this is my contribution. When you were returning with all these challenges, was there a sense of victory, not really victory from a point of view of a human victory, but from the point of view that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in my mind, was pleased with the kind of, I wouldn't say the word sacrifice, that action that I had taken? You come back with that inner satisfaction. How did you feel when you got back? That I went through this hardship with a good cause, and there's this inner satisfaction that I have from a mental point of view, having suffered the difficulties, but I was victorious. How did you feel when you got back?
I felt a great sense of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I also feel a great sense of amana, a sense of continuation of the responsibility, the communal and individual responsibility to continue this work. And I continue to make istighfar, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for the mistakes that were made at the flotilla at a collective level, as well as in an individual level. And istighfar because we never got to reach the shores of Gaza. We recognized that there were people, children, that had built sandcastles that were waiting on the shores. I was communicating with fellow therapists who were expecting our arrival and who we've been working with for a long time, expecting our arrival and how we were going to work together. So I make istighfar for that. And also recognizing that we're at a point now, at a juncture where there is great haspara about this peace plan. And it is not a peace plan. The reality is that these are legal obligations that are dressed as a peace plan. It is the Palestinians that have been broadcasting their own destruction, their own killing, that has forced this. It is the Palestinians that have survived through their own breathing and existence that has forced this Israelis and the Americans to yield and concede. And we must not be under an illusion and deluded to think that this is any notion of a peace plan, because it is a continuation of an occupation in a different guise.
Before I welcome, thanks Fatima for giving us such a comprehensive report and a very informative one, and I'm sure our listeners benefited. I'm just going to read out a message that's come through. The Sumud flotilla has proved that people can be mobilized from across the board. The Prophet ﷺ had got into parts with non-believers to overcome the enemies against Islam. Zionism and the UN and its allies has had a lot of experience in genocide long before the 1800. They got better as it every day. We need to continue from the flotilla and look at other ways to overcome this. We can control the minerals mine of our land and do away with the World Bank. So alhamdulillah, some listeners are making some comments. But before I get into our other guests in the studio, and I know Nazir has been patient listening. He's also an activist. So he's Abdool, Valodia, and our brother, Hassan Motala. He's our economist. He joins us regularly. But I'd like to welcome Dr. Faisal Suliman. Faisal, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to, of course, our sister Fatima and all of you.
I was reading out a clip before I continued my discussion with Fatima, and in that clip, I mentioned, a couple of things that they stand before the world as if they are peacemakers, and I think Fatima alluded to that point, before she concluded. Further, Pakistan's Prime Minister said that history will remember in golden word Trump's role in creating peace in the Middle East. Now, what better can you expect from the current Pakistan Prime Minister? What a joke. Trump supplied weapons to Israel for 2 years, blocked every UN resolution to stop the genocide, wanted all the Palestinians to leave Gaza, and praised the war criminal Netanyahu. Sisi closed the border so that Palestinians could starve to death. Arab states allowed the genocide. Now, I want you to briefly comment on the ceasefire and the peace plan, because I know there were several ceasefires and they were violated. So perhaps just, a quick comment on, do you think this particular peace plan would continue, or would Israel violate it with the smallest of excuses? Faisal?
Jazakallah for having me, Yunus. Firstly, Israel doesn't need an excuse to violate anything. It is in itself, its existence is a violation of international law, of humanity, as it's proved since 1948. So that is beside the point. The greater aim of the greater Israel annihilating Gaza is still on the table. That is not. You don't see them talking about recognizing Gaza. It's the idea at the moment is to de-weaponize Hamas. And they're going to use those Arab states, some of them you quoted, or we've seen the photos of in Sharm el-Sheikh, to do this if they can. Yunus, the one thing I'd like to say, and I think so, on WhatsApp groups, on discussions, there's a lot of focus or energy and time that goes on about what the Americans say, what the British said, Tony Blair said this, Ben Gabir said this, said that. Like even in South Africa now, Fatima alluded to it, the Hasbara is increasing on SAFM, on other stations. Hamas has shown the Palestinians since 1940s, but in the last 2.5 years, they did what they had to do, and they concentrated on their strength and what they're able to achieve. Even when it was, a man running in sandals with a mortar bomb in his hand to a tank, and dumping it on the tank and running away in his sandals and shorts and whatever. And they, even when we hear Hamas spokespeople, the attempt to kill them in Qatar, and now sitting down and looking at the focus was not on others because of taqwa, because of necessity, because of focus on their struggle. And I really would like, when Zahira spoke and Fatima spoke, now I'm sure there are a lot of people who are angry and shocked. Shouldn't be shocked, really. And imagine doing this to Fatima, who they knew would return and they were to report. And you can imagine what is happening to the Palestinians, what has happened to them who don't have a chance to go home and have the media attention, etc. So I really think what we seem to be doing is focusing on what we can do, irrespective of what the Arab traitors are doing, Pakistani traitor, that whole lot that were in Sharm el-Sheikh, because that is not going to be able to. We're not going to be able to stop them, but we can. At the moment, the South African government is under pressure. The media under pressure, and we have to use the tools we have. And I'd like to, if you allow me, elaborate on some of that.
Go ahead, Faisal.
We can be doing to now do our bit. Firstly, is to channel our anger into action. If we just heard Fatima this evening, like we heard Max Gilbert and all of those others for the past 2.5 years, and we were shocked and but we went back to buying from Cape Union Mart and buying Clover and going to Discam and using Tiva products and supporting certain soft drinks, etc. And the least of, the weakest form of our Iman hasn't even held up. Right? And I think people know the hadith better than I do about, the weakest form of your Iman. So channel this anger into action. So I have 3 appeals. We have to build a media presence and a social media presence. So I'd like people, it's easy to get hold of SAMNET, who are able to volunteer an hour or 2 a day for us to show them what to be doing on social media. Thousands of people can put pressure on, firstly, support to DERCO, support to for all the other failings of the ANC, and at the moment they are being, of course, a lot of it highlighted in Matlanga and the document in Parliament, etc. But in terms of foreign affairs, in terms of Palestine, of the ICJ case, that they need to be shown support of. Secondly, obviously the boycotts and du'as and funding for relief. But a media presence, a pressure on our SLBC, a pressure on the daily mavericks of the world, to complaining and being proactive, asking for the other narrative. Because they're under enormous pressure. And more importantly, a collection of money to pay professionals to do this full time. We all have jobs. Fatima too will have to go back to her family when her tour is over and have to put food on the table. And that is partly one of the biggest problems with the Palestinian struggle is virtually 95% of us who are doing it part-time while we have full-time jobs. And until we don't start saying, I'll give less money for feeding and less money for boreholes, but I'm going to take, and I'm saying this as someone whose wife collects money all the time to do all this under Carrick Sisters Network, but that's not the point. I'm sure Suliman will tell you the same thing and everybody else. We cannot only be putting money into this. We have to be putting money towards not just media, but political leverage. People have to understand what is going to happen if the DA takes control of municipalities. If anyone wants a reminder, when the protest started in Cape Town, when the genocide started, DA municipalities were arresting people, fining people for having murals on their walls, tried to ban protests, use the police in Sea Point, use the Metro Police, the SAPS to disrupt peaceful protest. That will become a national problem at municipal level in this next year's election. And I can assure you, anti-Semitism, Zionism you'll have laws that make criticism of Israel punishable because it will be considered anti-Semitic. You'll have a clampdown on funding, on the ability of Hamas to come to South Africa under a DA government. Make no mistake about it. Alan Zilla can't even use the word genocide. So I'm saying there are things we can do, irrespective of what CC, all of them there, Qatar, Saudi, whatever, irrespective of what they do, we have to focus our time and energy and discussions on what we can do. And there's a lot we can do. And like I said, we clearly don't have the time because I think people would rather listen to Fatima. Rather contact SAMNET, a student, a housewife, you unemployed person. While you're looking for a job, you need an hour of your time a day. Need help on social media. There are apps today that will tell you what to say and how to say, even if you don't have the knowledge yourself. It's a matter of us now doing this. I can assure you, Yunus, just from experience and other things I can't talk about, the amount of pressure, you've seen now delegations, South African Friends of Israel, 120 pastors going to Israel. You think that happened by accident, or it is the summary of years of work with the Shembet Church, with the ACGP, with the IFP, getting all of these people now to go to Israel, taking young black graduates to Israel, to the tech companies, bringing them back and making them spokesmen for Israel in the business community. These are all by design. When people say, there's a famous one, the Zionists control the media. Yes, but it didn't happen by accident. It happened by design. It happened with effort. It happened with money. And we can do it too. It just needs a change of focus from complaining and having the same discussions on WhatsApp to converting that energy into tangible action.
Faisal, thanks a lot, man. And what you've alluded to the fact that Zionism is spreading throughout the world and they're trying to capture Africa as well. And we've got to be conscious in South Africa that through the DA might be a possibility. I have some prominent political guests in the studio and we'll unpack that further. But I thank you for joining us, Faisal, and coordinating Fatima to join us this evening. Thank you very much, Faisal, and we will be in touch with you in the future.
And I think people would much rather listen to Fatima.
Okay, thank you very much, Faisal, and all the best. Inshallah, we'll keep in touch with you. I want to bring in Brother Nazir Paulsen. Nazir, the guys have been sending me some messages that my program is always service delivery, politically orientated, and we've gone a different direction. So today's News in Focus is exclusively about the Palestinian issue and some basically some subtleties that are coming out of our discussion. It's not a stereotype discussion. I think Fatima shared with us some very important messages that have come across with this Sumud flotilla, some detail that's come through the manner in which they were treated in prison, the atrocities that they face, what the Palestinians are facing, for many a year, not the last couple of years. They're persevering under difficult circumstances. Now, what Faisal has said, and that has been part of our discussion, and Abdool will join us shortly, is that South Africa has got a real threat. Whilst we appreciate that the DA is part of the GNU, but the manner in which the DA leaders have been persistently responding to the issue in Palestine, not only the genocide, the kind of difficulties, the atrocities that are taking place. There is world pressure, but must remember the heavyweights of the world are not responding appropriately to the Palestinian issue. Because of pressure about this peace plan, Trump, like a hero, and a few others have got together, have decided enough is enough, because now these boycotts are taking place. But South Africa is now becoming a real threat. With Cape Town, where you come from, where Fatima come from, they're trying to colonize that as being like a Zionist state. So you've been listening, Nazir, and I know you're a political activist and a Palestinian activist. Your comments thereof, Nazir?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran once again, Brother Yunus, and I must say, Dr. Fatima, I'm in awe, your bravery, but not just that, your work that you do for the Palestinian cause. I think it's a shining example of real activism, revolutionary activism, and I think every woman and man should follow your fine example. The length you went to express your support for the Palestinian people. Yes, Brother Yunus, I think very importantly, the first issue I want to touch on is the fact that it is a genocide. The United Nations Human Rights Council released a report on the 16th of September saying it is clear that Israel has intent to commit genocide. So I think, these world bodies are very important. But I think also what needs to happen is that the United Nations Security Council needs to be reformed. It's not right that one country has the power to veto any decision taken by the United Nations. It's the other thing is there'll never be peace in Palestine while there's an Israel in it. And that is why 2013, the EFF already decided that the only way to guarantee peace for Palestinians, for Jews in Palestine, for the Druze and the Christians in Palestine, is to completely dismantle the Israeli apartheid state and return all Palestinian lands. And we stand by that. But that said, whatever is going to offer some relief for the Palestinians right now,
we cannot turn that away.
You can't turn it away. We can't. They've more than 2 years of unending cruelty towards the Palestinian people. No form of medication, nutrition going into Gaza. This is some sort of relief. But that said, and also the release of Palestinian prisoners, almost 2,000 of them. And I do think the only reason why they are coming with this proposal is because America can't sustain this genocide any longer.
And the war and the cost associated with
The cost of this genocide is expensive. If we look at what happened in less than 2 weeks of Iranian attacks, Iranian funds their own military. The US funds the Israeli activities. It cost them a fortune. Every missile that was launched, every missile that was intercepted, it was expensive. That Iron Dome couldn't handle it. So they had to
concede.
And so
the peace plan is a little bit more than having mercy on the Palestinians.
No, I don't think the Palestinian is really part of that equation. It's more the fact that it's hit the US economy.
And then Hamas has said we haven't put up the white flag, so obviously they haven't conceded.
No, this is not peace. Israel does not, has never ever observed any ceasefire. They have never done that.
Well, listen, they could have retreated because pressure was quite high. And they said perhaps this peace plan is a way of retreating.
Probably. To go and regroup and come back again. So there's no, we are very skeptic, but like I said, for the sake of Palestinians, for the sake of the humanitarian aid going into Gaza, we'll take what we can. But we don't have any confidence in any plan.
The sincerity of the plan.
Or the sincerity of Donald Trump or Netanyahu or anyone associated to the Israeli entity.
That's the kuffar. You're always going to have that situation with them.
Well, it's not just kuffar. There are other non-Muslims out there that
are more passionate.
That are passionate and humanitarian. The Chinese, the Russians. So I think it's just that we're not dealing with
human beings. You're dealing with war criminals.
We're dealing with a war criminal. Netanyahu is a war criminal.
Or you're dealing with sadness.
And yes, of course, anyone who's willing to go.
Satanism.
He went to war. He calls it a war, but he was fighting civilians, women and children, old people. So the important issue for us is the relief for the Palestinians, but we don't have any confidence in any peace. So as a first phase, a ceasefire, but ultimately, at some stage, a free Palestine, what it looks like is nothing that the Americans or the Israelis envisage. A free Palestine means the non-existence of Zionism. So that to us is important. The ceasefire now, lift the siege on the Palestinians, end the occupation. Those are the steps that must follow, that must precede a free Palestine.
And there's a lot of areas where there's ambiguity that has to be dealt with.
Yes, certainly, because the 20-point plan and the council the board that will oversee, it's nothing about Palestinians. It's all about the Israelis and the Americans and those European nations, what they consider, what they want. Once again, must remember, at the time the Balfour Declaration approved the establishment of an Israeli state, Palestine was also governed by Europeans. We are now at the same stage in history where once again the Palestinians are denied their autonomy. And and I suppose there can never really be a Palestinian autonomy while there's an Israeli state in existence. But what has happened over the past 2 years, Brother Yunus, is that although countries have been very slow, governments have been very slow to respond to the genocide, civil society around the world has reacted. We had the Fotilla once again doing what governments couldn't do. If anyone was serious about peace, they would have followed what the Colombian president said. The only way to prevent the genocide is to send an army into Palestine. And he was prepared to send 20,000 troops. And I think that's the only way. There is never going to be a diplomatic peace agreement.
And it was a one-sided war.
In the same way, the only way to stop Hitler was to go to war. We are now with an even worse monster. A person that in live stream has committed a genocide for the whole world to see. And the Palestinians, they live streamed the genocide that they were experiencing. So I think the only just solution to the Palestinian issue is the dismantling of the Israeli apartheid state. So, and I want to come to the South African role, and people always praise the ANC for the ICJ case. Yes, the ICJ is fine. It will address the criminality of Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet. But we can do other more practical things in the meantime. We can expel the Israeli ambassador. On the 21st of November, 2023, the motion of the commander-in-chief to expel the Israeli ambassador was unanimously adopted by Parliament. It is the ANC that must implement that resolution of Parliament. 2 years later, it's not been implemented. So that's the first step. So, to isolate.
So the formation of the GNU is an indication of why that hasn't taken place.
No, I think even without the GNU, the president himself is compromised. So I don't think it's just the GNU. The GNU would probably be his excuse for not implementing the resolution. But,
So what you're hinting that he's captured also?
The whole ANC is captured.
Nazir, I want to
but I want to get onto the last bit, Brother Yunus. The last bit is that we run the danger of having our municipalities run by GNU governments in 2026. So the risk we have, and we know now that the ANC will succumb to the DA's demands. The DA is a Zionist organization, pro-Zionist, and the PA is even more Zionist than the DA.
Will both those parties survive in the next elections? We had the debate about that and more coming. We'll park that off and we'll chat later about it. I want to bring in our economist here. You mentioned that America has spent trillions of dollars in this war and find it difficult to sustain. Iran, just for defense, and other countries spend trillions of dollars. Ramaphosa is now declaring an economic emergency in South Africa because there is mention that there's so much of corruption, maladministration taking place, and it will have an impact going forward on the elections. Hassan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You've been hearing what our comrades are mentioning here, that it comes at an enormous cost. There is a lot of starvation taking place. There's humanitarian aid that's needed in Palestine. Yet trillions of dollars is being spent on wars financed by America and the Jewish lobby, because they're obviously controlling America. What is the financial implications? Because one of our subjects is global tensions, financial implications. So I want you to just comment generally that, whilst we say it didn't impact seriously on the markets, because this is being manipulated as well. Hassan?
So if you look at, globally speaking, most countries are feeling relatively okay. But if you look at the US in particular, US has had if you look at their defense in particular, they've spent a substantial amount towards Israel over the past 2.5 years. To give you one example, they've got certain warheads of this. which they've spent years to build up that stockpile of theirs. In the last 2 years, 20% of that stockpile has already been used. In 2 years. To replace that stockpile could take another 5 to 10 years to replace it. So the issue is that the US has spent a huge amount of money, and they wanted this also to ease off as well, but they could continue supplying, but they are facing challenges that if they continue supplying, to replace it for their own purposes is an issue. And that's why you're seeing in the media a lot around the right-wing commentators are realizing some of the challenges and the issues and the control by APAC and the like, and you're seeing that come into play. Now, in terms of the cost on the US itself, over the last 3 years, you've had what is called quantitative tightening, where the US, because of inflation post-COVID, inflation went up very high. Now we've seen in the last few years, inflation has sort of eased off of it, but the dollar has started to weaken. Look at what the Rand has done. The Rand has gone from close to 20 Rand not too long ago. We're now sitting currently at 17 Rand 20, 17 Rand 30. But it's done that against also other major currencies. So against the pound, against the euro, and against in fact all other major, like the Chinese renminbi and the like as well, have all strengthened against the dollar over the past year because you've had now dollar weakness coming through. One of the key challenges facing the global economy, and then I'll flow it to South Africa, is the potential trade wars that are taking place, firstly between China and the US, and then also US's trade tariffs and the like against most countries across the globe, including South Africa. We still currently got a 30% tariff imposed on many of our exports. Although our major metals like your platinum groups and the palladiums and gold are excluded from that. And you've seen what those metals have done for us in the last year has been phenomenal. So that's been a benefit for South Africa because platinum has picked up and you've started to see an increase in terms of the exports starting to come through. But the issue around the tariffs is that if these trade war between the US and China goes out of control. I think currently they're negotiating. China is saying that they're blocking this rare earth, which is a metal that is used in many technological equipments, and they control 80% of the world's resources currently. So they blocking that, and then obviously it's tit for tat, and then the US comes with say 100% tariffs on the. So that's going on. But I think Donald Trump, remember, he blinked in May when he started, and he blinked and he agreed to certain concessions with China. I think similarly as well, we will see something like that happening, and hopefully that risk of in terms of a Chinese and a US trade war will ease off. Now, coming to South Africa itself, I think we actually seen some positive momentum in the last couple of months. So firstly, our gold and platinum sectors are having a phenomenal run. Firstly, gold is trading at $4,200 an ounce, the highest we've seen ever. Secondly, platinum prices are up 40% over the last 6 months. Again, fantastic for our platinum and PGM industry, and similarly for the gold industry. So we are benefiting from that in terms of the revenues coming from that is good. Secondly, Transnet has seen some improvement in terms of export volumes. Now, the citrus sector, citrus season in South Africa had one of the best growths ever. And we thought we were going to have a really, really tough period during this period. But guess what? We had Transnet port terminals showed a 19% year-on-year increase in volumes. So citrus had a fantastic period, and because Durban did well, Cape Town did well, and in fact, terminals like Richards Bay and those places also did all very well as well. So that had a very good benefit for us, and we've started to see that improving quite nicely because of the exports on the citrus side is improving the South African, benefiting the South African economy as well. The one challenge that we do having though is that these tariffs are going to impact certain sectors like the motor vehicle sector. And the Eastern Cape in particular remains a key concern, especially during the coming year, because if that remains in place, that sector and that province in particular will be under pressure. There could be job losses, and that will obviously have a very big impact on that provincial economy in particular as well. But slowly, South Africans are looking for alternative markets. One example, again, agriculture, we thought we were going to be really under pressure. South Africa now signed a trade deal with China to supply stone fruit. So stone fruit is our peaches, plums, apricots, those things. They've signed a 5-year trade deal now to supply that market going forward. So while the US put us under pressure with their tariffs, slowly we're finding alternative markets. And what better than having China, which is a billion population, and supplying our fruit into that market, hopefully eases the impact that we're seeing on that side. And I think more and more of that is going to happen from South Africa, where we will look for alternative markets, China, India, and other Middle Eastern markets, to try and further grow our exports into those regions and those countries going forward. So I think SA, we are doing relatively okay. We've seen some reasonable growth, but we're still nowhere near the levels that we need to get to. We need to get to the 3, 4, 5% type of GDP growth to make some dent in terms of our unemployment challenges that we face in this country. And unfortunately, over the past decade, we've had less than 1% GDP growth. Now, to do that, we need to encourage, employment, to encourage entrepreneurship, and I think the SMEs can play a vital role in that. The SMEs have benefited, at least in the past year, from reduced load shedding. So you've seen some improvement coming through in that sector because of that there. But there needs to be less bureaucracy. We need to have a certain, easing in certain regulations to allow more businesses to open, and people are going to make mistakes. That's the nature of business entrepreneurs. But the more you have of that coming, the more people will be employed. And I think sectors like tourism, services, and even other areas, even certain manufacturing areas as well. We've seen surprisingly some revival in the textile sector, which was historically bandished, but now more and more you're seeing the retailers looking towards more local production for some of their clothing lines and the like. So I think slowly certain areas are seeing some improvement, but I think we're still around that 1% type of GDP growth expectations. We need to shift up a gear, hopefully, going forward. And I don't think that's gonna happen in the short term.
Thank you, Hassan. Under the difficult circumstances, South Africa is persevering, managing from a financial perspective, notwithstanding the global tensions. And what you alluding to, Hassan, is very important for our listeners. One listener wrote in and said, and restrict Glencore from sending coal to Israel, because that seems to be an issue. Now, I want to bring in the president of United for Palestine, the chairperson of ORA. He's also a civic activist, and listening carefully, he's got a lot of passion for what's happening in Palestine. He's been involved with the current government in creating the awareness of the genocide in Palestine. Brother Abdool, Valodia. Abdool, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. I brought you in quite late into the discussion, but I know you've got the advantage of listening to our comrades and activists here, Dr. Fatima, Hendricks, and others. So before I start concluding, we got about 15 minutes left. Your comments, Abdool.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi, Yunus, and thank you for having me on the show. And, first of all, really, our sister Fatima, I really want to, applaud her for regarding, for taking the stance, as a female, and going over this journey, which was not easy. Myself and Nazir, we've been actually discussing this. We wish we were on that boat, but Allah didn't choose us to go on the boat. And, Allah chose, people like, Sister Fatima. And really, this is really an honor to be meeting you in person. And really, for you to take that journey, may Allah, bless you, your family, for taking out this journey, and, to make that trip, I will say it's a success, because we need people like yourselves to break the siege. And, we always say when it comes to Palestinian work, people must try whatever means that you can find, writing letters, posting onto social media, onto groups, Awareness is something is the most important thing. And the only way you can break all this genocide, the siege that's happening, is by people with activism. Marches are excellent. Writing letters on a daily basis to the president of South Africa or presidents all over the world, putting pressure. That's the way, because one day it will crack. And that's the way that we look. If we look at ourselves as United for Palestine, Alhamdulillah, we would say we're an organization that has started that's running for many years. And in our group, we have more than almost 6,000 followers. And daily basis, we post things on the daily basis. We're posting regarding Palestine. And this has been happening for years. And Alhamdulillah, we've grown this group, which was this in the last year, within the year. From a normal WhatsApp group, we entered it into a channel. And the channel now is reaching almost 8,000 people in a month. Now, social media is something very, very important. Like Brother Dr. Faisal mentioned, people that if they want to be educated into social media, contact SAMNET. And, I would say they are doing an excellent job, trying to assist, people from how to go about. Because activism, if we look at ourselves, there's not many of us that's doing this work. And we need to make the circle bigger. Radio Al-Ansar also up here, it play a very important role with regards to, awareness of Palestine. And, we need to find more programs. We need to find more radio stations. But what is the important thing here? We are not here to convert our people. I think where the mistake happens with a lot of people, and Brother Nazir will also agree with me, is that we need to look at converting the masses. And the masses are the people of this country that don't understand what's happening in Palestine. So we need to find more people on the ground addressing these type of issues with them and making them understand what is going out, what is happening, with regards to the genocide. I mean, if we've been looking at posts on the groups, Nelson Mandela, his grandson that went out, and, I do have the utmost respect for Mandla Mandela, excellent man, excellent soul, left his family, went out there as well, and spent time just to go through. The, activism from a person like him, one person from South Africa, if you look at himself also, that's been on the forefront of this. We need to make that circle bigger. So coming back to Nazir, our brother Nazir, when we look at local elections, the Cape that you come from, and the DA stronghold, which is, we need to break it. And I think everybody needs to join hands together, and we must stop this. And we must find ways how to destroy this Zionist regime. Because how can you be sitting in the GNU and you get Helen Zilla say she doesn't, genocide's a big word. Maybe big for her, because she don't understand what it's about, because, she's answerable to her paymaster. And the paymaster is somebody that controls this.
She does understand, but don't want to talk about it.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
100%. Because that's how the Zionists does. The Zionists, they are so smooth in their operation that even if something is a lie, they want you to believe it's the truth. Even when you're out there with the Sumud, when you reached there, when you were there in Israel, they made you feel like as if you in the wrong and they in the right. And that's the feeling they will try to bring it out to you. When you meet, you meet even the people out there in Cape Town. There's a lot of Zionists that just see walking around. You take a flag, Palestinian flag, and the way they look at you like as if you are committing a sin. But we're still waiting for them to try it, for us here in KZN.
Abdool, we need to wrap up now, and I want to bring in Fatima. I gave you a long rest, Dr. Fatima. Brother Ahmed Didat, you heard of him, Fatima. Some 30 years ago, he mentioned, Nazir, that the Jewish lobby or the Zionists, they basically enriched themselves financially. They, got hold of the economy worldwide, and they got control of the economy. Because if you look at the companies that they are heading and owning, the major companies, and, Brother Hassan will mention to you that they hold significant shareholdings in these companies. So from a materialistic perspective, they're controlling the economy of the world. Every stock exchange, they're major shareholders. In South Africa, indeed in America, in the United Kingdom. This is why that block, they got it covered. And they also got the Arabian block covered. because they know exactly how to control the economy. And with the money in their hands, they were able to mobilize to start annihilating countries that oppose their ideologies. And I discussed the whole issue of Gaza many years ago with a forum here. And the question I posed is, why is the Zionists and the Israelis so find the Gaza Strip so important? And it basically the material pursuits, because Gaza is full of energy reserves, etc. And it's a very, virgin platform for development. So they had a materialistic pursuit. They're over and above Masjid al-Aqsa, etc. And Allah's plan is the best plan. So, Dr. Fatima, I want to bring you in because we got about 10 to 15 minutes left to wrap up. And you mentioned that beyond the global Sumud Flotilla journey, which you found was an opportunity and a privilege that you were selected and you were able to experience and come back with the satisfaction that you made yourself available to make a difference in people's lives. But the disappointment was around the fact that you had the ambition to be in the show with your brothers and sisters there, and many of them were looking forward, because I asked the question to Brother Ismail Mullah that is the ambition to really reach the shores of Gaza? And he said, we are hopeful, but the others didn't succeed, so we prepared for the worst. So unfortunately, that was the manner in which this whole thing unfolded. But through the amals that you all made in the ship, there was that inner satisfaction. So what's your message out to our listeners on a way forward? Dr. Faisal said, get into social media, create the awareness. From an Islamic perspective, make the du'as, do whatever we can. Others are saying, let's mobilize and create the awareness, because the other countries, and I think Nazir made a very, very pertinent comment, that if progressive countries got together and provided, support to Gaza, whether it's Pakistan, Iran, bits and pieces came from there, but none of them were prepared to mobilize, like America fully supporting Israel, some of these countries supporting Gaza, but they refuse to do that. Are they afraid, or are they worried about their own territory? So from your perspective, having been involved in activism of all sorts, including Palestine, what is your sort of comments on a way forward to continue with not only the peace plan, that became an alternative which Hamas had to accept because they didn't want to create the impression that people are starving and we're doing nothing about it. Fatima?
Bismillah. So I think as people of conscience, I think we really need to mobilize and have a reality check around Zionism in South Africa, how alive and well it is, and work towards conscientizing people to withdraw their votes for the Democratic Alliance. That has to be our single-minded pursuit about the onslaught against the DA, because we see the demographics changing. I see it manifesting in the Western Cape, and they've done this takeover through lobbying, through directed, focused energies on influence, as Dr. Faisal Suliman rightly pointed out. And there are tangible things that the PSOs are calling for, which we need to support. This is the passing of the apartheid bill to criminalize apartheid under a South African law, to close the Israeli embassy, like Brother Nazir said, Comrade Nazir, to enact what was passed 2 years ago, to hold our corporations to account, Glencore, etc., and to suspend cultural, academic, and sporting ties, exactly like what the South African Medical Association has done with the Israeli Medical Association, to publish the names of all those IOF soldiers and ensure that their prosecution is enforced, so that we can enforce the regulation of the Foreign Military Assistance Act. And to outlaw Zionism, we have organizations like the South African Zionist Federation that are built on racial supremacy, that are built on hate, and that continue to operate without any restrictions or any impunity. We need to temper our understanding of what is happening in Palestine with a clear understanding that it is directly linked to the global Zionist project, from AIPAC in the US to the lobbying that's happening in South Africa to what is happening in Sudan and the UAE, and connect these pieces of the puzzle together, and call for the invoking of UN Resolution 377 to dismantle the settlements for reparations of Palestinians and to mobilize this collective global force outside of the Security Council votes. And we really need to be firm on the opening up of full access to the borders of Palestine so that aid can reach the Palestinian people. So there are political things that we could do individually and collectively. And very importantly is that we have a very active BDS coalition. And we as a community needs to mobilize and make each other uncomfortable. If we get into a home, if we get to a function and we see things that are items that are on the boycott list, we need to speak up and act. And in our politeness and in our dedication to the Palestinian people, actually speak truth to that particular item, remove it from the table, go to the host, and in a nice way, deal with what is manifesting. And we have been far too polite with each other, but we really need to come to a point of discomfort so that together we move forward. Otherwise, we're repeating the same narratives over and over again. There was an excellent offer by SAMNET, and these are the kinds of initiatives that we need to take up on, and everybody is capacitated with something that we can do. Every single person. And it is this collective power that has seen the shift, that has turned the tide against Israel. And we need to continue in building these coalitions across every conceivable difference, all united in the single truth that this genocide is wrong, that the occupation is wrong, and that that the liberation of Palestine is something that we need to wholeheartedly stand in loving solidarity with.
Shukran, Fatima. On behalf of the Al Ansar Foundation and the Al Ansar Media Network, we appreciate that you joined us live in the studio on your first discussion in KwaZulu-Natal, and the Al Ansar Media Network was chosen for you to share this valuable information. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate
it. And we will definitely have more interviews with you going forward. But I think our listeners definitely, appreciated the sacrifices that you and your colleagues made from South Africa together with the others in conscientizing those Zionists that, listen, we're not asleep in South Africa. We fought the apartheid regime. We brought about democracy, and we share the vision of our former President Nelson Mandela that South Africa will not be free until Palestine is free.
Amen.
And we believe in the slogan, free, free Palestine from the river to the sea. Nazir, your closing comments.
Shukran so much once again, Brother Yunus, and thank you very much, Dr. Fatima. I don't think I've ever been so inspired about the Palestinian cause as I have been this evening, and you are correct. The hard work starts now, because we must not be fooled by the Zionists. There is no peace. There is no ceasefire. There has never been one. So we must continue with the pressure on the South African government, on governments internationally, that sanctions should be brought against the Israelis. That's the only way to end the terror of the Zionists, is to sanction them, to make sure that we have a real democracy in Palestine, or Palestinians can determine what kind of state they want, where Jews, Muslims, Druze, and Christians can live side by side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazir. And I know you like to wear that red overcoat of yours. But we appreciate it, you know. Your opposite, Abdool Valodia, you know, he's got some of the ex-members of EFF in a civic organization that he joins. Abdool, your closing comments.
No, it's really an inspiration, and Sister Fatima has also been an inspiration to us here, on air, and also Brother Nazir. All we can just say the same thing. That pressure needs to be put on. We recollect that we wrote letters to the president for sanctions, to apply sanctions against Israel. We've done that, and we have got no response. But we will say we must continue. And I would like to hear Nazir with the EFF bringing this motion again in Parliament and making a noise.
Inshallah.
Because the EFF is still one of the most vital organizations that we see. That the only right that stands up and make that noise. So Nazir, we would like to hear you in Parliament. We still recollect our brother Manzoor Sheikh Imam. May Allah, grant him shifa. And I hope he's listening to us. I'm actually almost in contact with Brother Imam all the time, and he was one of the lifelines.
Is he back in action, Abdool?
Inshallah, he is winning a little bit. He's coming through, and I wish that we can get him back.
Yeah, the loudest voice for Palestine.
Alhamdulillah.
The loudest voice.
We had
the smallest man with the loudest voice.
Yeah, he was a regular guest in my show.
Yes.
And he was making it known, and I know the Zionists and the DA used to object to a lot of stuff he used to say.
Yes.
And poor chap, got sick.
100%. So he's the type of character that we need to find back again in Parliament. And Nazir, I think you can do that. You can become that Imam now, because we don't have another one there.
No. There's only going to be one Mansoor Sheikh
No, but
Imam.
but you must be there now as the EFF, because the EFF likes to disrupt.
Is a giant amongst men.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
Maybe you can recruit him under the EFF when he recovers.
No, I will recruit. I will recruit him. Don't worry.
So,
He doesn't like fat food.
yes.
Shukran. Yunus.
Yes, thanks, Abdool, for those comments. And our economist, there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, Hassan, and I'm sure that quietly South Africa is just making its financial gains in the markets, and gaining from the losses of other countries.
Look, there are risks, and key risks are outside of our control, which is what happens in countries such as the US, China, those places. But within our control, slowly, as we address them, it'll help us. But we've seen now in the media in the last couple of months the amount of corruption. I mean, the Tembisa hospital case. There's so many of these. The amount if you just look at what that money could have been utilized more effectively in terms of the provision of basic and necessary services to the population of this country. So that is, but it was such a good example that showed vividly how money was being wasted on such things, where people were dying because of not being provided the necessary healthcare, but guys were buying 3 Lamborghinis and things like that. It's ridiculous. So there are things within our control and within this country's control which can address it, and things where we are slowly seeing in some of the public enterprises. Eskom is slowly returning to profitability, although they want to charge us ridiculous rates still for the coming year. But nonetheless, we've seen a reduction in terms of load shedding. You've seen Transnet slowly at the ports and even the rail. There's been an improvement in terms of volume starting to come through, and then you are starting to see, I think, in other areas of service delivery, slowly some improvement. Now, just imagine if you can see at least a 20-30% improvement in many of those, the potential impact that has on the economy in terms of job creation and in terms of revenue generation can be phenomenal. We need to get that right, but we need many of those that are implicated and have been noted to now be put into orange overalls and get into prison and serve and be held accountable for that.
Thank you, Hassan. I just need to conclude and reflect on a few important issues that was raised in our discussion this evening. I think Dr. Fatima Hendricks mentioned that the state of the prisons in Israel, and the conditions that prevail. Thousands of Palestinian prisoners are still in prison. Slowly they're being released. And the kind of persecution that they've been going through compared to what we're facing in other parts of the world, the kind of starvation, the genocide that's taking place, and the loss of all the resources of the residents, our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Houses have been destroyed. The entire, lives have been destroyed. When they're slowly getting back to Gaza, they're picking up the pieces and they've got nothing to survive on. Now, it's very important that as part of our activism, we really look at supporting the Gaza reconstruction that needs to take place. And there's going to have to be a lot of focus on that. Although the president of Turkey, Erdogan, mentioned that the rest of the world needs to commit to the reconstruction of Gaza, I think it's important that, whatever little bit we can do in the form of collection of funds, in the form of support, we need to assist in that regard. And I know organizations that are involved. So the Al-Ansar Foundation is committed to provide support to Gaza in that regard. We did, donate a significant sum of money last year towards humanitarian aid in Gaza. So we continue to be committed to the support, but more important is the reconstruction of Gaza. And we are hoping that this peace plan will persist for the Gazans to get back and humanitarian aid comes in, because I know Israel is trying their level best to start blocking. So in conclusion, I want to thank our guests for joining us this evening. Dr. Faisal Suliman, Chairman of SAMNET. Hassan, Motala, our economist, is always with us. Dr. Fatima Hendricks for making a first trip to Radio Al-Ansar, coming from the Western Cape. I'm sure she'll have an enjoyable trip in Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal. I believe, Fatima, you're in Queensbridge Mosque tomorrow. It's a very old mosque and there's a lot of activists there. And then on Friday, you are at the Islamic Forum meeting. And I'm sure you've got other programs where you'll be able to share some important information. But we're fortunate that you shared a lot of it with our listeners today, and I'm sure they'll treasure it together with your other activists. Abdool, as usual, we thank you for joining us, always committed to the Palestinian cause, committed to civic activism, improving service delivery in the different areas, mobilizing towards municipal elections. Nazir, as usual, a political activist in parliament, talking about the support that we need to give our Palestinian brothers and sisters and improving service delivery. I think all our guests, we value the input you've given us. But finally, I want to mention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of the entire world. And as Dr. Fatima mentioned, you can't forget, we have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finally for assistance, because the Sahaba Ikram went through a lot of wars and challenges, and with minimal number of members who were defending the country during the different battles that took place. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, always advised the Sahaba, do not forego your obedience to the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as shown to us by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. And one of the first, suggestions and recommendations made is keep up your salah no matter where you are. And then after you perform that salah, you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah's plan is the best plan. So we should continue with ensuring that, as believers, we obey Allah's commandments as shown to us by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. And our way of life must be dawah to those that don't have iman. On that note, it's almost 10:30. That brings us to the end of News in Focus for this evening. We had a very lively discussion. Normally, we have a lot of political discussions going on, but that will continue in due course. But the subject for the next couple of weeks is Palestine and how we can mobilize to assist our brothers and sisters there, to conscientize our communities. Inshallah, we'll continue with these type of discussions going forward. Until next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.